country, but we are very, very lucky to have Ian Walker talking to us tonight. Ian's done practically everything you can think of in sailing, from being an America's Cup skipper, a double Olympic silver medalist in 2 different classes, a gold medal Olympic coach. He coached the England team to win. He is the only British skipper to ever win the Volvo Ocean Race. He's been a world champion 4 times in 4 different classes. And is it 8 European championships, Ian?
I have no idea.
He's now director of racing at the RYA, which means that he's responsible for everything from the Olympic campaigns to revitalizing club racing, which is something that he's one of the greatest advocates of at the RYA. And yesterday he was speaking to a worldwide audience on the Vendée Globe live English program. And today we're very, very privileged to have him talk to us today. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you very much, Tom. And well, thanks for inviting me. If we were all in the clubhouse bar, then I'd be able to say, look, let's just keep this informal as possible. Please, if you've got any questions, throw your hands up, shout out. But I guess the online equivalent is use the chat function. I've prepared a bunch of stuff around, Tom and I came up with the topic of from a gravel pit where I learned to sail, not so dissimilar to Spinnaker, to the Southern Ocean. But I suspect that we'll veer off in all directions, and I'll try and leave as much time at the end as possible to really talk about anything you want, whether it's COVID, whether it's revitalizing club sailing, the RYA. Let me have your gripes, whichever direction you want to go. In the meantime, I haven't done a sort of club talk for quite a while, probably since I sort of early days of the RYA. So I sort of started by digging up sort of an older presentation of something similar I'd done and some things I'd done at the Dinghy Show, in case some of you recognize any of it. But it was actually quite fun. But it's remarkable how long ago some of it now seems, having been at the RYA working for 3.5 years. So let me just try and share my screen. Has that worked? Do you want to, Tom, do you want to wave if that's worked? Okay, great. Right. Well, so this is where I learned to sail, and I think the first reaction I've already had was exactly what I expected, which is that's not so different to Spinnaker. I've of course sailed at Spinnaker quite a lot, team racing predominantly against Southampton University. So this is a tiny little lake, 76 acres, just off the M25, junction 5 of the M25 near Sevenoaks, and I happened to grow up about a mile from there. It wasn't my first experience of sailing. My first boat I ever had, if I can change the slide. There we go. That's my first boat. That's me, 6 years old in Paris. And I was given that for my birthday, and I used to go down and I used to push it from one side of the fountain to the other, and I worked out that if you didn't have a rudder, so you had to balance the sails to get it to go in a straight line. So I was right into the science of sailing early on, and if you didn't get it into a straight line, then you had to wade into the middle of a pond and get it back, or wait a very long time. So I wasn't a traditional sailing family. I really just fell in love with it through this model boat and through then living near Chipstead Sailing Club, and that grew fairly quickly into a lifelong passion. And in most of my formative years was spent sailing this mirror dinghy, number 50,000, believe it or not, mirror 50,000, the Golden Mirror, which was actually awarded as a prize by the Daily Mirror when it came out. And I think to say I was obsessed with sailing is probably an understatement. I would sail after school. I'd sail every club race, doesn't matter what it was. The day the calendar came out, I would organize all the races I was going to do, either crewing for my sister or sailing myself. By the age of sort of 11, I was helming the boat quite a lot. But I was a pretty sought-after crew as well, and sailed Fireflies and Graduates and Scorpions and Enterprises. And, I would crew for somebody in the morning points race, and then I would ask if I could borrow their boat at lunchtime to sail it, and then I'd come back and crew for somebody else in the afternoon. So sailing was my passion. The Mirror was my boat of choice. In those days, we had a lot of single-day open meetings, and there was a Kent Travellers circuit. So we used to spend a lot of Sundays driving around. And I always thought it was an advantage that my parents couldn't sail, because they used to enjoy taking me to the races, and they never tried to rig my boat. They never knew how to rig the boat, and they certainly couldn't give me any advice or tell me what I'd done wrong. So it was just me, what I read, what I picked up from other people, and being fortunate enough to have parents who would drive me around and help me in those formative years. And as you can see there, I won the Europeans at the age of 16, which was pretty unheard of in those days, because there was quite a lot of adults used to sail the Mirrors back in those days. And we had, I think, 130 boats or something at that event in North Berwick in Scotland. And I also had a brilliant crew. And I think I learned very early on that you were only as good as your team. And Fergus Ross, who crew, we won the Mirror Nationals 4 years in a row sailing together. We started out very young, very light, very fast, but very stupid. And then we ended up late teens, too heavy, not particularly fast, but pretty smart. So we kind of won it in all ways. My club didn't have trapeze boats, so there was no question of sailing a 420, but I went to a club called Bow Beach, and I was invited to, it was an RWA training weekend, actually, and they saw me sailing the Mirror and said, you should be in a 420. I was 16 or 17, didn't know what a 420 really was, certainly couldn't sail at my club, but pretty soon that's what I did, and I was into the youth program with the RWA. Really late on, only 18 months, because I was already sort of 17 by the time I started. My dress sense needed left a bit to be desired back in those days, still does. And for me, it was all about the Olympics. I think that's Grapham Water, or Grapham or Rutland. I think it's Grapham. Anyway, and it was about the 470. My dream by now was to sail in the Olympics. That was. And through my university years, I sailed 470s, and I did a lot of team racing, actually. And the team racing, I always felt, and I know Spinnaker are very strong on team racing, I always felt it was hugely formative for me. I learned the rules. I learned really good boat handling. Nobody would ever have out-roll tacked me back in the day. Not so good these days at getting under the boom. But that was an important part of my learning. And in those days, I was a helm, but slowly getting too big. Lost the Olympic trials in 92. By now, I'd got a university degree. I'd had a year out for the university for the Olympic trials, and I just wanted a bit of fun. And so I said with a university friend, I sailed a 14, and that year we sailed a lot, did a lot of training, and managed to win the Worlds in our first year in the boat, which again was pretty unheard of in what was pretty technical class. So while I was at the 14 Worlds, Johnny Merricks, my rival really all the way through my young formative sailing years, phoned me up and said, look, I need a new crew. You're too big to helm. Why don't we sail together? And that was the start of a new partnership. This is Johnny and I. We were one of the first boats to really actively seek sponsors. The rules had just changed, allowing you to have sponsorship, because we didn't have any funding behind us, really. Johnny worked for North Sails. They paid some of our costs, and we started sailing full time. And we were pretty unbeatable. I think the power of having a helmsman crewing, really helped with the decision making. And Johnny was naturally probably one of the most fastest sailors to ever live. So Johnny and I were pretty formidable. And the little photo in the bottom there was the moment we won the silver medal at the Olympics in 96. I've got to rattle on through the years. I'm very conscious of time. If someone could mute, somebody's not mute, a bit of background noise. And then I love this photo. So there's a baby Ben, as we used to call him. Now he's Sir Ben. So I have to be careful not to call him that anymore. And that's Sir Ben Ainsley, Johnny Merricks, and myself winning our silver medals in 96, which turned out to be really critical medals for British sailing, because in 97, the lottery funding came in. And because we were one of the sports that had won medals, sailing became an A-funded sport. And we started to get increasing amounts of funding, which then funded the development program and the youth program and everything through the 2000s and all the way to current day. So it's ironic that I'm now running the performance program for the RWA and had a very big part in actually getting the funding, along with Ben, who was really, really young, 19, when he won his medal in Atlanta. I had a bit more hair in those days, as you can see. Straight after that, wanted to expand, started getting to keelboat sailing. This is Johnny and I doing the Admiral's Cup, the Fastnet. We won the Fastnet that year, which was, again, sort of unheard of because it was a big offshore race and offshore was all new to us. But we trained hard. We'd go out practicing in the dark, practicing our maneuvers, which many other teams didn't. And whilst we were not very good to start with, in the space of 6 months, we got really, really competitive. That led to I could spend the next hour talking just about from the last slide to this one. But in 97, after the Admiral's Cup, Johnny and I were in a car crash, and Johnny passed away at the Melges 24 Europeans in Italy. And so I guess my world came crashing down. Had this unique partnership with Johnny, and kind of that, that was it. And it was a tough period for me. And actually what got me out of it was another tragedy, was Mark Cavell. Big Mark, you can see in the photo bottom right. He sailed with a chap called Glenn Charles, who was one of the sailors who died in the Sydney-Hobart race in 98. And I was in Australia at the time, and I knew Glenn well from the Olympic team. He'd represented Britain in the Olympics in 96. And we met in the bar at the funeral or the service in Hobart at the end of the Hobart race. Really emotional time. And I said to Mark, after a few beers, I sort of said, well, maybe we should sail together. Maybe I can help you. I've been through this, and sort of jokingly. Anyway, on the plane on the way home, I thought about it and thought, actually, that's not such a bad idea, and maybe we should try it. And so Mark and I phoned up Rod Carr, the Olympic manager, and said, I've got this crazy idea. What do you think? And he said, well, you should go for a sail. And so we did. Anyway, one thing led to another, and 18 months later, Mark and I not only been selected for the Olympics, me now helming, of course, having become a crew with Johnny, and we managed to win the silver medal again. We lost the gold by 1 point, but the whole thing felt like an incredible success from where we'd started. And again, very short space of time, we'd sort of mastered, or at least I'm not sure you ever master it, but we'd got ourselves to a position, an incredibly technical boat, to win a medal. So probably my best achievement in many ways. So yeah, we're sort of moving on now. On the back of that, timing is everything. I'm now 30 years old. Peter Harrison launched the America's Cup Challenge, and was looking for a skipper. And I was fortunate enough that he asked me because I guess because my Olympic medals and the fact I'd sailed the Admiral's Cup and the Star, and he must have seen something in me. I was pretty young, and it suddenly found myself running a 35-person sailing team. With 20 million euro budget, not much time, no experience of the event. So I had this amazing time, and in New Zealand, where the current America's Cup is. And if I'm fast enough, maybe we can talk about that at the end. So I won't dwell on it, but I can tell you, as I was explaining to my daughter when we were watching the America's Cup the other day, I cannot tell you how fast my heart was beating when I entered the start area of the America's Cup, helming the America's Cup boat with 25 tons of boat barreling down on the opposition and the weight of responsibility of the nation. So I can only imagine the pressure that Ben and his team feel when they're hurtling around at the speeds that they are. Tom's already covered this one. I became a coach to Shirley Robertson, her team. This is me not following the RWA rules because I've not got a life jacket on, so I'm lucky I wasn't sacked. Maybe the life jacket rule wasn't in force back in those days. It was a bit looser. But anyway, the Shirley and the girls won the gold medal with a race to spare, which was extraordinary performance from really some extraordinary individuals. And I so many memories, really. One of them was trying to add the points up before the last race to try and tell them whether they'd won or not, or whether they needed to do the last race. And trying to double check my numbers. And when you're trying to tell somebody they've won a gold medal, you don't really want to get it wrong. So I remember that clearly. I also remember the fact they didn't have to sail on the last day, which is why the current medal race, double points medal race, was brought in because the girls didn't sail on the last day, which of course the television audience couldn't understand. How can you win a gold medal without even sailing? They were in the spa getting ready for the medal ceremony and relaxing. So I'd like to think I played a small part in the advent of the double points medal race, even though I don't particularly like it. But anyway. That's another story. By now, I'm trying to make a career in professional sailing. These are two boats that I project managed the build of. TP52s, won the World Championship in the TP with this Irish owner, Eamon, through my business partner, Jamie. And I guess the interesting thing about this was where it led, because my business partner, Jamie, who was married to Shirley at the time, he had this brainwave of asking Eamon and some of his business partners to fund an Irish Volvo Ocean Race team and ask the Irish government if they would fund a stopover. And at the time, Ireland was booming. So that's what we did. And we got €5 million from the Irish government to hold the stopover. We did the deal with Volvo to host the stopover in Galway. And then we set about raising the money and building a boat. And this was the boat, the Green Dragon. We're in 2005 or 6 by now. And anyway, we sort of started building this boat without the money to finish it. The recession hit and Ireland crashed. And we then, I learned a lot of lessons in terms of financial management from the point where we were trying to build the boat to the end of the race, where we never really had enough money to finish the boat. When we started the race, we never had enough money to finish the race. But we managed to create this amazing team with some wonderful sailors like Damien Foxall and Justin Slattery and Ian Moore and Neil McDonald. And I never meant to sail the boat. This was a business venture. But when we didn't have the money, I couldn't attract a big name skipper to come and skipper the boat. And kind of we couldn't raise any more money because we didn't have a team, and without the skipper we couldn't get a team, and it was a bit of a vicious circle. And in the end I phoned Jamie up and I said, look, Jamie, I've got a plan. Why don't I skipper the boat? I've skippered the America's Cup. Maybe I skipper the boat and we can use my name. And anyway, that was how I ended up skippering the Volvo Ocean Race. Never meant to do it. Never sailed further than the Fastnet race really before our passage, our qualifying passage. So you can imagine the lessons I learned sailing around the world on this boat. But fortunately, I had brilliant people around me, and although we had our moments, this was a real adventure. And I've got my memories of the Volvo Ocean Race are stronger from this race than any other. I mean, we got in, everywhere, on the land, on the shore, on the water. We pushed the boat to the limits. Really fond memories. And of course, this amazing thing of a sailing race where you actually get to visit, the whole world. And, I love the fact that I can watch the Vendée Globe now and I can relate to where they are in the world and what the sea's probably like and the currents and the challenges, etc. So real privilege. And this was the scene when we arrived in Ireland. And we were, I think, 5th in the race at the time. But we finished the leg into Ireland in 3rd place. This is 2:00 in the morning. 25,000 people turned out to greet us. Like we'd won the race. I'm not sure all the Irish knew what they were watching. They'd all come out the pub at 1 a.m, but they were all having a great time, and we were at the heart of it. So amazing experience. That led very quickly to the next challenge, which was Abu Dhabi. So Abu Dhabi were looking for someone to run their Volvo Ocean Race team. They were fully funded. And they were looking for a management team, and Jamie and I pitched for it, and it ended up they had, I think, 37 management teams in inverted commas pitching for it. And it came down to ourselves, Offshore Challengers, which was Ellen MacArthur and Mark Turner in the Isle of Wight, and Alinghi, the America's Cup holders. And anyway, somehow we managed to win that pitch. So sort of 2 bald men with laptops, and suddenly we were in charge of this amazing Volvo Ocean Race program for the United Arab Emirates. And obviously we moved out there. This is me getting to know the locals and the local customs. Great privilege to sail a local dhow. And some of these races, by the way, have $1 million prize money on one race. And you don't even tackle jibe. It's just downwind. You pull the sail up, lift the anchor up, sail downwind for about 7 miles. First to the finishing line gets $1 million. So it's probably actually the most lucrative sailing, but of course foreigners aren't allowed to do that. I was allowed out just for a little practice run. So out in the Middle East, I was there 5 years in the end. That photo isn't actually of the Fastnet race that we are now the record holders of. That was actually during the race, but I thought it was a good photo, so I'd stick it in there anyway. And we started well. We won the Fastnet race before the Volvo. Like I say, we broke the record, but already we could see that we weren't very fast reaching, and that was what would come back to haunt us in the Volvo Ocean Race. It wasn't the only thing to haunt us. We broke the mast on the first night of the race. You imagine it? You can see that's me there. You can see the light shining off my bald head with my arms crossed. We hadn't even got out of sight of land, and we broke the mast trying to sail around the world. You can imagine that was a pretty difficult phone call with the sheikh when we got back ashore. But we stepped to spare. We caught back up with the race. We did have some amazing times. This was us with my Arab crew member, Adil Khalid. And this was us winning the import race in Abu Dhabi. I have to say, if we hadn't won that race, I think I would have been sacked. But we did win the race. And we had Prince Andrew as our guest. And he was trying to call tactics the whole way around. But anyway, that's another story. I would have had a few more questions to ask him if I'd known his history. But anyway, this was us winning the import race. As I say, it saved my job because it didn't get any easier. This is a place you might have read about, Point Nemo. It's the furthest point on land on the planet Earth from land, halfway between New Zealand and Chile, and south of, is it the Easter Islands, or I think to the north. And we were about 100 miles from there when we split the boat all down the side. And this was the repair we had to make. We had to drill 32 holes in the bottom of the boat in order to bolt it back together, the skins back together. And that was the nav station there, chopped up and made into a splint. And then we had to brace it all with the bunks that we chopped up to brace it all to the ceiling of the boat. And then we had to nurse the boat through 3,000 miles of Southern Ocean to get to Chile, where we were able to catch up with the race. So, difficult times and obviously feeling the pressure running that campaign. I'm rattling through this, forgive me. That led to the next thing, which was another Abu Dhabi challenge. Unfortunately, despite the disappointment of coming fifth in their first race, they liked working with Jamie and I. They trusted us. We'd done a good job with the budget and the PR, and we'd done enough. We'd won the transatlantic leg. We'd won quite a few import races, and they trusted us to go again. And then this was the next race. This is the last race I did. This was the Volvo Ocean 65 One Designs. And that photo, believe it or not, was taken in the Solent at the start of the Round Britain and Ireland race. As you can see from the photo in the top, we won that race. It was just before the start of the Volvo. And we went round Britain and Ireland in, I think it was 4.5 days. And the most incredible thing was we didn't tack the whole way round. So we said the whole way around Britain, there was a low pressure, and we basically kind of reached around this low pressure all the way around. And I remember we set off to the east, and I think the first night we were off Newcastle. After 24 hours or something, we were off of Newcastle. Then the next night we were around the top of Scotland, and the next night we were halfway back down Ireland, and then we were in the English Channel. And the first time we tacked was when we tacked to go back through the forts, having sailed the whole way around Britain. And so, of course, amazing weather. And even though these boats aren't that fast relative to 100-footers or foiling 60s, we smashed the record. And probably that record will stay for quite a while, not least because the race is only every 4 years, of course. But that's a photo I love. And the thing about this race was it was one design, and that was played into my hands. The America's Cup, the Volvos before, we kind of fell, tripped up because we didn't have a fast enough boat. And as you've seen with Ben out in New Zealand, where it's been really exaggerated, a bit of boat speed makes a huge difference. And as they say, it makes you a tactical genius. And, if I could rewind the clock, it would be to work harder on the initial stages as to get the strategic decisions right, to make sure you had a faster boat, or to try and get a faster boat. Good teamwork isn't enough at this level. But now, of course, we had similar boats. We had good funding. We had continuity. We had a great team. We had the smarts, the experience, and we were pretty much unbeatable. We podiumed nearly every leg of the race. We did until we'd actually won the race. And it was a great story. And I'm going to very quickly roll through some photos. Again, I could spend a whole evening just talking about one leg of any of these races, but that was the route. So typical Volvo route, starting on the left, down to South Africa, up through into Abu Dhabi, avoiding the piracy in the Indian Ocean, and then out through the Straits of Malacca to Sanya in China. Which is a tough leg, beating up into the northeasterly trades, or monsoon, sorry. And then the long old sort of fetchy, upwindy type leg across the trades to Auckland. Then the big Southern Ocean leg, which would cause so much trouble for us before, to Itajaí and then up to Newport. And then, of course, you feel like you finished then. It always makes me laugh. You get to Newport and you think, oh, we've nearly finished the race. But, of course, you've still got a transatlantic, which to most people would seem like an interminably long leg. So that was the route. This was the boat. This was actually us leaving New Zealand into a storm, tropical storm. I just threw one photo in of life down below. You know, you only live in half the boat. That's Justin clearly just thinking about life before he goes up on deck. Excuse the sort of pee bottle there hanging by the hatch, because when it's rough, the only way you can really have a wee is to do it into a bottle without going all over the floor. You know, life's pretty basic. It's you don't take very many clothes. You change clothes once a week. You eat freeze-dried food. You share a bunk with your off-watch partner, and you know, you sort of learn that actually in life you don't need that many things. You know, you need to get on with the people around you. You need to eat enough. You need to drink enough water. You need to make sure you don't put yourself in danger. You don't need fancy phones. You don't need fancy clothes. You don't need to shave necessarily. So you learn a lot about yourself, and you've got plenty of time to think about things as you're sailing around the world. You have a lot of fun. You know, you need a bit of banter to keep morale up. This is King Neptune visiting Matt Knighton on his equator crossing on the first leg. We shaved a strip of hair off all the way down the middle of his head. And actually, to this day, you can still see it, even though his hair grows back. It stayed with him for life. But anyway, it could be worse. He could look like me. So, yeah, we have a lot of laughs. I like that photo just because it's me grinding. It does show that the skipper doesn't always sit down below drinking cups of coffee. I was in the watch system, 4 hours on deck, 4 hours off. Typically, you grind for your first hour, and then you trim for your next hour, and then I would probably steer for the next 2 hours. And then you have 4 hours off, and then you get up and do it again. Everybody on deck for every sail change, everybody on deck for every tack or jibe. And I helmed every tack or jibe or sail change. Sorry, not every sail change, every tack or jibe all the way around the world. So we had consistency. I have to say, waking up in the middle of the night when it's blowing 35 knots and you've put your kit on and you've got to go on deck and jibe and you've just been asleep is a bit of a shock to the system. But anyway. That's the state you get in. I stick that photo next to my desk at work just to remind me that life wasn't necessarily better before. But it does take its toll on the body, and it takes a long time to recover after the race too. But we had some amazing good times. This is us arriving in Cape Town in first position when the previous race we'd broken the mast and had to be shipped there. So you can imagine the difference in feeling and the elation at doing that and proving to ourselves that we could do it. I just threw that in to show that we were trying to foil back in those days. That's us getting knocked flat in a big gust, leaving Cape Town actually with the Cape Town doctor coming down off of the mountain there, Tabletop Mountain. Again, you get so tired you'll sleep anywhere. When it's light winds, you have to sleep in the bow to get the bow down, just like you sit forward in your dinghy. We do the same thing on a 65-foot boat. If it's light winds, everybody sleeps down below at the front in any space you can find. But you're so tired, it's not a problem. This is me in the nav station with my head in my hands. I think one of the things I did have to learn was to try and control the emotions, the emotional roller coaster of every weather forecast, every position report. Have you gained? Have you lost? What's everyone else doing? Have you made the right decision? And it does really weigh on you. You can see it written all over my face, worrying where the next wind's coming from. You've got, as skipper, you've got the responsibility of the sponsors. You've got the responsibility of the families of the sailors on the team. And, you do genuinely have to make life and death decisions at time. And it definitely took its toll. I'd be lying if I could pretend it didn't take its toll. And it's one of the things I didn't really miss after the race. Of course, no matter how bad our days were, they were never as bad as this boat's day. This was Vestas running aground. You'll remember this when they hit the coral reef in the middle of the Indian Ocean. This was a reef that if you zoomed out on the electronic chart, you couldn't see. When you zoomed in, only when you zoomed in closely did it actually show that there was land there. So they were zoomed out, doing their ocean routing, looking thousands of miles ahead in the middle of the night, and sailed straight into a coral reef. And I have to say, we probably would have done as well if it wasn't for my navigator, because he labeled the chart beforehand, and I was looking at it going, why on earth are we going around there? And then he zoomed in and showed me. So easy mistake to make. Again, I've got tons of stories. The best story about this one actually was they took a lot of the bits off the boat, the valuable bits. It's an uninhabited atoll, reef in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And they took everybody off and went ashore, and they came back for the boat like 5 days later. When they came back for the boat, anything else had been taken off the boat, including the diesel engine that had been taken out of the inside of the boat, even though it was an uninhabited island in the middle of nowhere. So the fishermen are clearly very entrepreneurial in those parts. Just a selection of photos. I mean, this is, you take amazing sunsets and sunrises for granted. The photo of us sailing top right through the Malacca Straits, dodging ships. They're probably the busiest shipping lane in the world if it isn't the English Channel. Fishing nets, drift nets, miles of drift nets, trying to avoid the fishing nets and the unmarked fishing boats all up through the China Sea. And a photo there with the anchor, just to say we even anchored in the Volvo race when the wind dropped and the tide went again. So I can say that I anchored in the Volvo race. Amazing scenery. This was us in China in the import race. Obviously incredible wildlife with albatrosses and dolphins. And you get to really appreciate actually how small the world is. If we can sail across in a week, clearly the oceans aren't that big. And you really start to appreciate when you see man-made debris in the ocean, as far from land as you can be, you start to appreciate that actually the world that you think is incredibly big and has got an infinite ability to soak up our pollution actually isn't that big, and that we do need to look after it. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons so many offshore sailors like Dee Caffari, like Ellen MacArthur, like Mike Golding, all become spokesmen for environmental charities. You haven't got a doctor, you haven't got a dentist. This was a bit of a quick fix with epoxy resin on on Justin's tooth. You have to make do with what you've got. And we do have people who train up as medics, but 3 days training doesn't really turn you into an A&E doctor or a paramedic or a dentist. But fortunately, I never had a medical emergency or never lost anybody over the side. And for that, I'm very grateful. This is my showing off slide. One of the great things about Abu Dhabi is they always sought more publicity, and the way they did that was by paying famous people to come and sail the import races with us. So whether it be Rory McIlroy or Zinedine Zidane or Freddie Lundberg or Jonah Lomu or the Brownlee brothers, Dan Carter and the rugby boys, Luis Figo, you can see there, we had some amazing guests, King of Spain. So yeah, lots of stories to tell, and lots of things to share with my family as well, who are obviously part of the experience. The picture of me, actually to the right of sort of middle right, there's a picture of me with a football. That was a publicity stunt with Kaká, who was the Brazilian, sorry, not Kaká, Cafu, who was the captain of Brazil when they won the World Cup. And so they decided that it would be a really good idea if I did a keepy-uppy competition on the stage at the prize giving with the captain of Brazil, or the former captain of Brazil. And I, having lost my temper with them and told them it was a crazy idea and it was going to embarrass me, I then had to spend about 3 hours practicing keepy-uppies. But I think I did my world record under pressure, so that was okay. I love the weather. I was a geographer at university. One of the things I loved about the ocean race, particularly in the trades, was the clouds. And faced with a cloud like this, where would you navigate? Would you cross it? Would you stay the right side of it to get more wind from the rain? All those decisions. How far off course are you prepared to go to stay in the strong wind before you get back on course and inevitably lose your wind? Cells like this growing and collapsing on you. All of those decisions, the tactics of the round the world sailing, which I really enjoyed. And to be honest, that's what I've really enjoyed about sailing since I was a kid. One of the things I loved in the mirror as a young kid was I didn't see any reason why I couldn't be as good as anybody else. Not in an arrogant kind of I'm brilliant way, but in a, I wasn't the best at rugby. I wasn't going to be the best at football, even though I loved football. I wasn't a particularly fast runner. I was just average. I was average build, average speed, reasonably coordinated. But sailing, I really believed I could be very good at, because it wasn't just about your physique. It was about the mental side. It was decision making, risk management, the sort of chess game, if you like. And that is what's always interested me. And that's why I actually prefer crewing to helming, because you've got more time to focus on those areas, whereas the helmsman is so focused on making the boat go fast. This was a photo coming. I reckon this photo was taken within a mile of where the American boat so famously leapt out the water and nearly sunk on last Sunday. So that's Rangitoto in the background, the Hauraki Gulf. And the reason, the point of this photo is that this is just approaching the finishing line in Auckland, and that's another boat just in front of us, and there was another one just behind us. So the pressure of racing with literally less than a mile between you, approaching the finishing line is hard to explain, with the pressure that with the toll in the last few days of your decision making, especially as you approach land and things get a bit crazy. That's actually New Zealand, the land on the map there, and you can see the chart and you can see the route, which is basically telling us to go straight into the middle of the eye of the storm and then jibe and come out the other way. The pressure systems go the other way around in the southern hemisphere, of course, so that's actually a low pressure. And what this reminds me of is Alex Thompson's first leg, where, of course, he sailed straight into the eye of the storm and then came out the other side and made a massive gain because of, absolutely, that's the thing to do. But it's not the thing to do if you're going to break your mast or destroy the boat. And so this is the kind of difficult decision these guys have and girls have to make is, do I do the optimum route or do I take a little bit more conservative? And actually, one of the things I learned is I tended to be on the conservative side, and generally you could get away with the more aggressive route. So I was pleased to see Alex do that. And I was going to say get his rewards, but who knows what damage was done at that moment that he didn't discover till later. Southern Ocean, you get a lot of this, grey skies, water over the deck. We got 3 reefs in the main there. This was approaching Cape Horn. 4 people on deck, one's driving, one's trimming, one's grinding, and one's kind of spare in the corner ready to jump in and help or make the tea, whatever needs doing, move the stack around. This was actually taken in the middle of our record 24-hour run, 550 miles in 24 hours, and that was on the approach to Cape Horn. This is us going around Cape Horn. You can see the relief. We were first. No, we weren't. Were we first round? No, we weren't first round. We were third around, but we'd just broken the world record at the time. And that's Cape Horn in the background. And I think this will go down as probably the best day sailing of my life. You can't get better. 25 knots, fractional zero, surfing the waves. You no longer think you're going to die because you're getting out of the Southern Ocean. You get to see Cape Horn. You speak to the lighthouse keeper on the radio in your best Spanglish. And so, quite a day, something that will stay with me for my whole life. Another great photo from the helicopter, by the way, that came out to courtesy of SCA. SCA paid for a helicopter to come down and photograph them coming around Cape Horn. And they took lots of photos of us. And then when SCA came around, it was at nighttime and it was too windy for the helicopter to take off. So they didn't get any photos of SCA, but we got some wonderful photos of ourselves. And that photo is taken the same day on Brunel. That's a 65-foot boat going down the mine. So, that's a fairly common occurrence. So, it just kind of highlights some of the dangers and the reason why you have to clip on. That, believe it or not, is 2 miles from the finish in Newport, Rhode Island. So another very tight finish, which that one we just lost. I think we lost by a minute and a half at the end of a 3-week leg from Brazil to Newport, Rhode Island. The elation of victory, that's me with my business partner. We'd been through a lot. We'd had all the difficulties of Green Dragon. We'd had all the disappointments of the second race. And then finally to win the race. And it's one thing being on the boat when you can control it. But Jamie there, who's in tears, he's the one who has to deal with the sponsors. He's the one who has to explain everything. He's the one who doesn't get any sleep because he's following the tracker. So you can see there's a bit of man love. True emotion comes out. And then the moment we lift the trophy, which was the culmination of probably 12 years work, and quite a lot of sweat and toil. So, special times, presenting a team shirt and a replica trophy to the Sheikh Mohammed in the UAE in the Royal Palace, which most people would never get to attend. So again, quite an honour. And here I am now. Brings us almost up to the current date with plenty of time left to discuss other things. So after the Volvo race, I kept professional sailing for about a year. And it's a great life. Don't get me wrong. I was sailing the most beautiful boats in the most beautiful places with really interesting people and some of the best sailors in the world. But it wasn't a project. It was just day rate sailing, incredibly lucky to do it. But I wasn't learning anything anymore. It wasn't a project like the Volvo or the America's Cup. We weren't building towards something. I was just making a living. And I was also away a lot. And it does take a toll on its family. My kids by now were teenagers. And I kind of realized that if I just kept traveling the world, they were going to have left home before I'd ever really spent any quality time with them. I didn't really mean to be locked down with them for a whole year like the last year. But anyway, that's a different story. So, the opportunity came up at the RYA to become the director of racing, or to at least interview for the role. And so, I went for it. I wasn't sure it was necessarily I wasn't really sure what the role was. I've now learned that the role is kind of in two parts. There's half of my role, or one hat that I wear, is all about performance. It's about the Olympics. It's about youth sailing. It's about the pathway that feeds performance and excellence. It's funded by UK Sport. We're measured by our Olympic medals that we win, or we have been to date. And I guess I had a lot of experience and knowledge to give in that area. And it's something that really had kind of made my sailing career that I'd benefited from and I was passionate about. So that was the one side. And then the other side of the job, the other hat that I wear is kind of everything else to do with sailing in the UK. And so my responsibilities there extend to training of race officials, to the rules, to team racing, to measurement, certification. We have a coding business for commercial vessels at the RYA, which I knew nothing about, obviously. And the more participation side of what we do. So, junior training, support of clubs, although most of the club support really falls within another department, sport development, who look after, accessibility, learn to sail programs on board, push the boat out, you might have heard of, Discover Sailing as it is now. So I kind of wear these two hats, and I have to say it has served the purpose of learning. I realize now how little I knew when I started the job. Tom, obviously, I've got to know Tom Clay through the racing committee, having to work with committees, both in terms of, reporting to them, but also learning to reach out to them and ask for help and get their support. Obviously, the RYA is a membership organization with policy forming committees, but it also has a really big volunteer network that we're entirely dependent upon. And so I think as the longer I'm in the role, I would say the less I'm focusing on performance and the more I'm focusing on the wider sport. And I'm just going to check the time, 1:15. Right, I'm going to wrap up. Sailing is under a lot of threat at the moment in terms of declining participation, challenges from other sports that didn't exist 20, 30, 40 years ago, the changes in society, modern life, expectations of people in the family, and expectations for kids, and their attention spans, how they get their kicks. So it's a completely changed world, probably the fastest pace of change the world has ever seen. And on top of that, right now we've got all the challenges of COVID. So it is all consuming. There's no such thing as a working day right now. It's get the job done, whatever we need to do. We've obviously had the postponed Olympics, and you can imagine the impact that's had on those individuals, especially those that were looking forward to the end of their careers after Tokyo. And at the same time, obviously, I've got to manage and motivate my team of 35 staff. So yeah, heaps to learn. That's what makes the job interesting. Fundamentally, it's all about sailing. Sailing has been my lifelong passion, and as you can see, I've come a long way from my model boat on the pond in Paris and from Chipstead Sailing Club. these pictures. There's one picture missing actually there, but there's me in my 400. So I now sail an RS 400 out of Warsash Sailing Club. That was me at the Tiger Trophy, and then the bottom photo is actually a 420. That's my daughter with the bobble hat on, crewing, and I'm very proud of her. She's actually in one of the youth squads at the moment, and also my other daughter also is a very capable sailor and enjoys sailing, which ultimately has always been my aim with both of my kids, would be to see them enjoy the sport and get anywhere near as much out of it as I have. Oh, and there is my other daughter. And actually, that is my favorite photo. That is me crewing for my youngest daughter at the 470 Nationals. In the boat, by the way, that I raced in 1996. So that photo was 21. When was that? I'll have to think when it was. Probably, would have been nearly 25 years after it was used in the Olympics. And I can also say she'd never sailed a 470, and we finished in the middle of the fleet. So it wasn't too bad, especially as I can hardly get under the boom these days. My other real passion is the John Merrick Sailing Trust. So Johnny, who passed away so tragically in 1997, we've raised money ever since, and we've given that money to clubs and to young sailors with a financial need. We've awarded over £600,000 in that time. So I'm really proud of what we've done in Johnny's name, and that continues. We're a small charity, but we do what we can, and we're really proud, and I'm really proud to do that for Johnny's dad, Dennis, in the photo in the top left, who's still alive today. Sorry. And then that's just a great photo of Japan. I've spoken about Japan, the Tokyo Olympics, and again, I've leapt ahead of myself. Some of the photos of the RWA, and my favourite course I've seen set yet amongst the race officials by the race team at Chipstead Sailing Club, when the 420 sailors were late for the start because they couldn't get out of bed in junior week. So they set them that course. And there we go. That's the end of the sort of formal bit of the proceeding. Now I've got to see how I'm going to stop sharing, because I'm trying to leave quarter of an hour for questions, and I'm quite. No one's put anything in the chat, so I'm quite happy now for someone to stick their hand up, wave their arms, write something in the chat. Oh, Tom's waving his arms. I knew I could rely on you, Tom.
That was absolutely fantastic, Ian. Thank you so much. And I will try and spot people if they go on video and put up their hands and choose them in turn. But could I just start by asking you to talk about, you've sailed loads of different boats, and I think in youth sailing, you've taken lessons from the Norwegian skiing team. And perhaps you could talk a little bit about that in youth sailing.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's two questions there. I have sailed a lot of boats. I've never been, other than the Mirror, which was obviously my huge passion as a kid. I've never been a snob about boats. For me, the thrill is the racing and the teamwork and the decision making. And very often the slower boats have the better tactics or the harder tactics. So actually, I don't get kicks out of going fast in a boat. If I want to go fast, I'll go in a car or a motorbike or something. Having said that, I've not been on one of these new AC boats, so I might change my story if I sailed on one of those. Maybe I should get into foiling. So I have moved through, and I've never stood still. I've never sailed a star since the day I won the silver medal. I don't think I've sailed a 14. I think I'm right in saying since I won the Worlds. So I've never been afraid to move on. I've never been afraid to learn new stuff. What's my favorite boat? I actually think the TP52 is probably the best boat. I think it's the most versatile. You can sail it inshore, offshore. It's a delight to sail, and it's competitive under IRC. Great one design racing. So actually, I got a lot of satisfaction out of the TP52, and obviously I'm very fond of the Volvo boats that actually got me around the world safely. Okay, I'm going to come to Paul's sent a question in on the chat. Your second question was about the Norwegian youth program, youth system. So we've made some changes since I've been at the RWA, and I think they've been a long time coming. And it's to start to reverse the trend in the emphasis on outcome in junior sailing. So I think in all walks of life, not just sailing, there's been a massive increase in pressure on kids whether it be, any sport or education, much more emphasis on the result or the outcome rather than the process and developing the love of it. And, whether it's exam results at school where the emphasis is on to get the exam results rather than to, become good at maths or English or develop a love for the subject, or whether it's sport where people are more interested in their child becoming a champion sailor or football or anything else. And I think that can be quite damaging. Some kids get through that, but by having squads at a very young age, we that's great for some kids, but it's also not good for other kids. It's not good for the kids that don't make the squad. Sometimes they've not made the squad just because they maybe are too small or too big, or they've hit puberty earlier than other kids, or not, or they're late developers, and so therefore we sort of exclude them at a very young age. So we're sort of narrowing our talent pool, and if we don't coach carefully, we coach an emphasis on performance, and we measure a kid's progress by race results, when actually probably at that age we should be measuring it in some other way. Yes, kids, if they want to be good at sailing, the most important thing is to spend a lot of time on the water, but you don't have to do it all the time in a structured, coached way. And you shouldn't have to travel all over the country doing national squads in order to do it. Nobody coached me to sail. I learned in my own way. Now I'm different. It's not all about how I learned. There's many good sailors have come through the current system, don't get me wrong. But for me, the most important thing, if you want to get good, is to have good local training partners. You look at Ben Ainsley, he got good because he grew up with a bunch of other good kids on Falmouth. And yes, he had good input from coaching at the right time. But the key point was they did a lot of time on the water, a lot of messing around, and had good people to race against. Same with Hannah Mills, same with Ian Percy, and in many ways, same with myself. So I think we need to, I guess I'm trying to find this way where we can de-emphasize the results at a young age. We can be more inclusive. We can therefore keep kids in the clubs for longer so that the kids don't leave their clubs too early. Once you sail in a squad and once you get a taste of different venues and high quality coaching, it's very hard to go back to your club, to club racing. Unless that club is really providing a good quality racing, which many clubs, don't provide or aren't able to provide. Anyway, your reference to Norway, Tom, is that actually it's in law in Norway that you're not allowed to stream kids in sport below a certain age. I think it's 14. And the interesting thing about Norway is that despite the fact that they don't select kids below that age, and they don't even publish results of competitions below a certain age, Norway was, I think, top of the medal table in the Winter Olympics. Now, I know they get a lot of snow, but there's lots of other countries get a lot of snow as well. So it's about providing the right support at the right time. Some kids can take it, some kids can't. I haven't got a vendetta against the optimist. It's not about that. It's about encouraging kids to just enjoy their time on the water and do as much of it as possible, and then retain them in the sport for life if we can. What is the one thing that you think clubs should do differently? Well, Paul, there is no answer to that, I'm afraid, because the answer is every club is different. And some clubs are brilliant. And I have to say, Spinnaker are probably, almost top of the class. If people were to ask me to list clubs that are really proactive, trying different types of racing, asking them membership what they want, trying to encourage growth of membership through other activities such as stand-up paddleboarding or anything else, you would list Spinnaker, you'd list Bowmore Sailing Club, you'd say Hayling Island Sailing Club. So I think every club is different. What should Spinnaker do differently? I don't know the club well enough to be able to comment really, but I do know that there's a lot of things that the club is doing well. I think some clubs, Warsash. I'm a member of Warsash, great club, a lot of time for the place, but actually really good junior program that's actually all about inclusion. It drives a lot of membership at the club. It's excellent, really good volunteer run. But but actually the racing could be better for the kids. It's quite challenged because of the venue and the tide and the fact we start on the river. It's really hard in a slow boat to have an interesting course. So I think at Warsash, as an example, and I hope that the Commodore doesn't phone me up and berate me for this, but as an example, I think there's more we could do to make the racing more interesting for the kids, would be one thing at that club. So I'm going to dodge the question and say that every club's different. But for sure, if you're not listening to your members and if you're not trying new things, then you're probably not trying hard enough if you're on the committee. What's been your favorite moment while sailing? Yeah. Again, oof. I mean, I've talked about one, sailing around Cape Horn. Winning my first Olympic medal with Johnny, that's obviously an amazing time. I mentioned another one, sailing with my daughter. It's probably my proudest moment. It was doing the 470 nationals with my daughter. Favorite moment. I'm not sure. Is that enough? I've answered it 3 times. Why do the rules need to change every 4 years? As a weekend sailor who learned them once, it's tough to recognize the minor change as well as a cost to buy the book. Well, I guess the rules need to change because over the course of 4 years, there's always cases that come up and protests that come up where the rules experts realize that the wording of the rule is quite ambiguous or could be better, or things just change. So whereas 40 years ago, it might have been acceptable to throw rubbish in the water, it's no longer acceptable to throw rubbish in the water, and it was felt important enough to put in the rule book. Because of the rise of parents in junior sailing and the rise of coaching, and therefore the need, for instance, that led to a need for a rule to manage support people and their behavior as well as the behavior of the sailors. So there will always be new rules, new reasons for rules, and a need to tidy up the rules. The one thing I would say, Robert, is that most of the rule changes this year are really minor and wouldn't change the game at all. Unless you were an absolute rules expert, you wouldn't know any difference. And that is why they've been prepared to change them before the Olympics. Normally, they're only changed after the Olympics. So whereas in the past, we've had some really significant changes, it's really pretty minor this time. As well as the cost to buy a new rule book. I think there'd be plenty of ways of finding out what the changes to the racing rules are without buying a new rule book if you really wanted to. I'm sure the RWA, if they haven't done already, will be doing seminars on it. The Race Officials Conference had an excellent presentation by John Durr on the new rules. If it's a real problem, I'll send you a presentation on the new rules and the changes that it makes to the racing rules. But I would say that getting the app on your phone is not too expensive and the best way of making sure that you've always got the rules when you need them. You don't have a vendetta against the OPI. I learned in cadets, you in mirrors. The helms taught the crews and mentors them. The RWA has a focus on learning single-handers. Is this emphasis right? Thanks, Michelle. I'm a massive believer in double-handed sailing. I think we have created an incredibly inefficient way of teaching people to sail, because before the advent of coaching, you learnt by crewing, which is a brilliant and completely affordable way for it to happen, because you don't need any coaches. You crew for a while, you learn from the helm, you become a helm, you read some books, you follow other people, and hey presto, you're able to win a European Championship at the age of 16. Unfortunately, the world's not like that anymore, and there has been a massive increase in single-handed dinghy sailing across the board, not just in junior. And I have to say, even with personal experience now, double-handed sailing is quite hard at junior and youth sailing, because you've got to find somebody who's compatible that you want to sail with. And as numbers of people have declined in clubs, it's sometimes quite hard. For instance, even in, not so hard in the really junior boats, but it's hard once you get 420s. How do you find a female crew who's 5'10" and 60 kilos to crew you in the 420? It might be quite hard. So I completely hear you. Unfortunately, I think this falls in the realms of we're not going to find a way forward by looking back. I don't think. So I don't think the solution to the decline in sailing is to try and make everything like it was 40 years ago. I think it's the world that's changed, and we have to try and work out what it's going to look like in 20 years' time and adapt to that. There's a lot of simplicity in single-handed sailing. One of my projects has been to design one of my projects before joining the RAA was to design a new really junior double-handed boat, because I am so passionate about all those people who maybe don't want to crew. I had one daughter who had no intention or inclination to helm at all, and therefore she wanted to crew. And it is a real shame that the cadets and the mirrors have declined, but I don't know how we're going to reverse that. It's really weird just talking to yourself. Some would say I do it all day long at work, but anyway. Olivia, right, we're going to get a good question here. Olivia, 8 years old. I missed the bit where you said you learned to sail and your first boat. Okay, Olivia, I'm sorry about that. Hi, I can see you. Isn't it your bedtime? No, not yet. You're okay. Special occasion. So I learned, Olivia, the first boat I had was a model boat. And then the next thing I did was sail with my sister, crewing a mirror dinghy, the little boat with red sails. And I used to crew for my sister, and I crewed for different people at my sailing club. And then as I got more confident, I started to steer the boat. So I used to steer the boat and practice, and I used to crew in the races. And then in the end, my sister and I had a massive argument because I thought I knew more than she did. And so we ended up not sailing together anymore, and I started helming, and she went to university. One thing I would say, Olivia, is I sailed lots of different boats. So I used to borrow topper. All I wanted in my life as a young kid was a topper. And I used to save all my pocket money under the carpet in order to try and save up to buy a topper. I think I needed £250, I think I needed. And I used to save up my money, and my parents didn't want me to buy a topper. My dad always thought I should sail a mirror. And he thought a topper was a plastic boat and I shouldn't sail it. So I saved my money under the carpet for about 2 years to buy a topper. And then by the time I had enough money to buy the topper, I was now a bit older and I wanted a 420 and I couldn't afford a 420. So I ended up with lots of money that I'd saved to buy a new wetsuit and a life jacket, but I never got my topper. But one thing I did do is I used to borrow other people's toppers all the time. Steve's got to go.
That's absolutely great. Do we have one final question from anyone before we thank Ian hugely for a wonderful talk and inspiring everyone? Any last question from anyone? Well, if nothing else, Ian, I suppose my question to you is, how do you go about talking to your wife and loved ones and saying, I'm thinking of going to Point Nemo again?
Actually, so yeah, my old joke I used to say when someone would say, what was the scariest part of doing the Volvo Ocean Race? And I would say it was telling my wife I was going to do it. But of course, that was how I earned my living. And so, and it's fair to say that I was a pretty devout sailor when I met my wife, who, by the way, doesn't sail at all. So I guess she knew what she was signing up for. But, you know, the Volvo race was an amazing family experience. They came to some of the stopovers. My parents, who, as I've said, didn't sail, were the most passionate sailing supporters you could imagine, and still are. My mum, who's 80, will be up watching the America's Cup racing. She will be following the tracker of the Vendée Globe. She will WhatsApp me and ask me a question about something she's read on a sailing website. So my sailing has given my parents an amazing lifetime of following, sort of through me initially, but much wider than that. Of course, they know a lot of the people involved, the likes of Ben Ainsley and so on and so forth. So I think that's one of been the most fun things, is the places I've been and the fact I've been able to share that experience with other people. We didn't even get on to Ben, did we, in the America's Cup? Maybe that will be the next talk.